Good morning. My name is Kate, and welcome to our class this morning with Guy. You're joining us on a beautiful Sunday morning in Oregon. Hope it's nice where you are too. Well, I guess I wouldn't say that to the in-person audience, but to all of our online people. Hello to you as well. Glad you're tuning in. It's going to be a nice day today, and I'll tell you a little bit about the format for class. In just a moment, Guy is going to come on and he'll give an hour-long talk. We'll take a short break, just a 5-minute break, and we'll come back for a second part of class where we'll have an open Q&A dialogue with Guy, and I'll tell you more about how you can participate in that later on. For you in the room, if you have a cell phone with you, if you could please check and make sure you have it off. And also for our online audience, if you have any tech issues during our broadcast, you can reach out to us in a couple of ways. You can send a message in the chat area or the question box if you're in GoToWebinar. You can email me at support@guyfinley.org and I'll help you. And any other questions, feel free to reach out that way as well. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to read the topic for today and then I'll hand it over to Guy. Our topic today is learn to turn in the right direction and realize self-liberation.
Good morning, and good afternoon, and good evening to all of you wherever you are in the world and whatever day or time it is that you are catching this talk. I'm glad that we always at least have the opportunity to share the ideas that we do with you and the world. Before I read the key lesson, because I intend to cover something that on one hand I know is quite difficult for most of us to understand. This idea of a relationship between the observer and the observed, working in the opposites, all those things that drives most of us absolutely insane because we can't get a handle on it. Well, I'm going to try to give you a handle today, something genuine, something that you can use if you understand that what I'm sharing with you is a tool and not the destination point. I can't say that strongly enough. Spiritual ideas are worse than useless if you don't take them into the laboratory of your daily experience in all of your relationships, to use them to help you see what it is that you have yet to see is true about yourselves, high and low, light and dark. So I want to strengthen that idea one more time with you. You cannot fail if you work. If you don't work, it doesn't matter what you think you have succeeded at, you have failed. Here's the key lesson. The ceaseless, anxious search to find our true place in life, including what we should be doing with it, can never lead to a happy ending until we realize in real terms to whom it is our life belongs and to what end. We will never know what happiness is, true happiness. We'll know a thrill and a chill, a spill and an excitement, all the things that come with being in this world and searching out the pleasures it has to offer. But you will, and here's the problem. The big problem is that you think you know what happiness is. That's the biggest problem. Because you are always looking for what your mind tells you you need to depart from and arrive at in order to bring about this sense of happiness that you think was taken from you by some external circumstance. There is no condition on this earth or in any of the heavens that can take from you the essential right that you have as a human being to be at peace with yourself wherever you are, regardless how many seeming problems there are facing you in that moment. That's why we must, if we want to know this happiness, we're going to have to find out to whom it is that our real life belongs and to what end. Because now you have the end in mind, don't you? Okay, let's get started. Nice deep breath. Once upon a time, a great king, a wise king, ruled all over the country, disguised himself, and he would often do it in order to wander out amongst the people that to whose lives he was responsible for overseeing, just to see what the nature was, what the touch was of the world, because he needed to do that. How could he know if he just sat up in some place and thought to himself, I wonder what's going on? So in one of his journeys, he happens to be sitting beside a stream when, and no one would know it was the king because he's disguised, when along comes a weary-looking traveler. And you could just see it on him, like most human beings that you look at today, kind of anxiously looking around and at the same time looking down at the ground. And that stranger wanders over to the king and says, would you mind if I sit with you just for a while? And the king said, no, not at all. And the king could feel the weight of this unhappy man, but he didn't say anything, and he just sat there quietly, waiting for the traveler to speak up. And he offered to share some bread and apple that he had with this traveler, and they shared some wine the traveler was carrying. And they began to develop a kind of a friendliness between them. And after a few moments further, the king asked, well, what brings you to this part of the kingdom? The man said, honestly, I've been wandering for what seems like forever. And I've been through every possible difficulty you can imagine. I've been robbed, I've been beaten. And regardless of that, I managed to pick myself up and keep going, but for all of my effort, I seem to be no closer to my destination than ever before. The king asked, well, what's your destination? He said, this is hard to explain. More years ago than I can remember, I left home. This is a little bit of a twist on the prodigal son story. Longer than I can remember, I left my father's home because I thought I could, go out and really make my own. And he said, in some ways I succeeded, but in others, no matter what I was able to create, it always seemed to me that something incredibly important was missing from my life. But I got so turned around that I couldn't remember much. And then he said, right at the worst moment of my life, I was sitting there and I was kind of holding myself. And I noticed there was something in my jacket that I had never felt before. He said, but it wasn't in the pocket. And I turned the coat inside out, and it wasn't there. And then I realized something had been sewn inside of the coat that I had on that my father gave me when I left. The king says, well, don't keep me waiting. What did you find? And he said, well, again, it's kind of tough to explain, but it was like a kind of a will. It was in my father's hand. I could recognize that. And it said something along the lines that at any point when I wanted to come home, I would have half of his estate. And I wouldn't have even entertained the idea during all of my journeys, but at that point in time, it sounded really good because I realized that I could do all that I was doing, but I was still missing something essential to my own happiness, my own peace. The king says, well, tell me more. What exactly? He said, well, see, that's the problem. I found this will, but I can't for the life of me remember where it is that my father's house is. I've been gone so long, I turned around so many times. So the only thing I can remember, the traveler said, is that And from a boy, I can remember this, that somehow the sun would never set upon it. It always had light. And so that's what I've been doing all of these years. I've been trying to, if you will, follow the sun. Thinking to myself, if I just follow the sun long enough, I'll find this place where the sun never sets and return to my Father's house. The king said, I know something of this place, and I also know how it feels to want to return. But he said, along with your intention, it's useless unless you learn to look in the right direction. Now, I know you who join me here and online, I assume, that poetic or metaphysical or whatever nutty word you want to give to it, there is a longing inside of your heart that you have not been able to answer, where no matter what you've given to yourself that this world offers to you because of what you want, you're starting to realize that if the world could in any way whatsoever bring you to that place where you felt you were home again, content unconditionally in a light that never settles or sets, if those wants could have brought you there, you would have long ago found what you wanted. Because is it true or not? I bring you into the question now. Is it true or not? How many times have you found what you want? It's really extraordinary if you examine it. I've found someone, I've had sex, I made money, I had great food, I traveled, I saw the most beautiful places, all of these things, my bucket list. But the problem with my bucket list is what? It has no bottom to it. And you need to be honest with yourself about that. And you're not. Because every time something new occurs to you that's going to bring you this sense of at last being whole and happy, my kids, my grandkids, my career, whatever it is, every time that occurs to you, there's another false flag, and off you go running to try to find it and make for yourself a home away from home. A home away from home. So I want to talk to you about home. Phone home. So we're going to look at this story of this prodigal son, prodigal daughter, all of which are we not? So that we can, through the eyes of true self-knowledge, and again, knowledge is not the thing. Knowledge, any more than a key, is the other side of the door. So that through this knowledge, we can make our journey back to find our true home where the sun never sets. Interested? Take a nice deep breath. That was the nice, easy part. Well, the rest is kind of easy too, but you're gonna see we have to go deeper. Don't reject deepness. We have to somehow or other, and I use the words in quotations, train our eyes to be able to see the invisible. We do not see the invisible now with our eyes. What we see is what's always in the foreground, that our eyes fall upon, that our attention goes to, so that the entirety of our experience is always in the foreground of life. Yes or no? And I don't have time to go into all this. I made pages of notes. There is no foreground without a background. We don't see the light that lets us see the things in the foreground. We don't understand the space between the formations that allows us to experience depth and dimension. We don't know anything of the background at all that allows us to participate in the experience of the foreground. We don't see the background of our own unconscious associations that give our thoughts meaning, that give them direction. We know nothing of the unity between the background and the foreground. Nothing. All we know is what we want and what we don't want. And that's always at the foreground, is it not? We know nothing of the background that's unfolding in, because if we did, we'd be able to see the big picture and then realize, I've been here a gazillion times. Yes or no? So what is this invisible world that we have to see? Now, I'm just going to help you look at some things, not with your physical eyes, but with the eyes that Christ talked about. And that Buddha, all teachings talk about this capacity we have to see, meaning to be aware of. To see is to be aware of. For us, to see has no awareness in it at all. Because what we see is what we want. And that's our experience instead of the experience of the awareness of seeing. Instead of the experience of the awareness of seeing. Do you understand the difference a little bit? So we live in an invisible world. It surrounds us and we live in it. It is all around us and we are within it. Within and without at the same time. Do you get that much? And what is this invisible world that we live in? Well, we could sit and describe it. It would be useless. But obviously, from the most quantum, sub-quantum level, all of the quirks, groupies, and quabos, I can make up any name I want. They do it when they're discovering these things. These ghostly things that come flying through us, 7 trillion of them went through the breath that I took, all interacting with something that God only knows why, because it's invisible to us. We have no idea that we're never not being touched from within and from without by a host of celestial conditions and forces, each and every one doing something that by and large we have zero awareness of. Would you agree with us? So of that 3-dimensional world that we live in, for instance, we don't even have the awareness of the 4th dimension, of time. Time is not part of our awareness. The punishment of what we call time is always pushing us. But when you look out and you have a moment where there is beauty in it, in that beauty, what takes place? Is it not timeless when you see something beautiful? Beauty? You are so beautiful. Is there not? Now, if all of these worlds, subatomic, macrocosmic, galactic, all of these things are constantly interacting, and they are they not? They're all meeting someplace, are they not? And if they're all meeting someplace, and we know without having to think about this, although it's important to bring it to our attention, that all of that somehow or other, microcosmic, macrocosmic, quantum, subquantum, all of these things somehow or other, they're all working together. All of that interaction is producing creation. And creation, not our creation, but creation itself, is beautifully balanced. It is always dying and being brought back to life. It is always going through some form of transformation through a relationship of the intersection of these infinite parts, waves, and particles, each and all meeting somewhere together. Yes or no? So all of that is commingling, isn't it? It's a nice word, commingling. And it's marrying all of itself together. Yes or no? All done in an impersonal field of intelligent awareness. All taking place within an impersonal field of intelligent awareness. How do we know that's true? Because somewhere all of these things are gathered together in their relative kingdoms and levels, and each vine and each branch, each level of creation as it descends is connected to every other level, because it is from the highest that the lowest appears. Yes or no? And this is what we don't understand at all. That there exists at all times within us and we within it, this invisible, impersonal field of intelligent awareness where everything in that field is connected at some level or another, and nothing changes anywhere in that field, that the whole of the field doesn't change. And it does so in a timeless world. In a world that is not bound by time. But the action, the spooky action of all that is unfolding in that intelligent field of awareness, then it manifests itself in passing time, because creation takes time to manifest as opposed to the forces that bring it into existence. Hello. I know, and I try to make it simple. Do you see it? Yeah. Now let me show you something. First, I'm going to ask for that image to be brought up. What I have just described, Rumi spoke about perfectly. I'm going to read you what he wrote. You know some of it, but I'm going to read the whole piece. Out beyond our ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other makes no sense at all. The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the door sill where the two worlds touch. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep. Now, I asked Kate to bring up these religious symbols. There's 15 of them. I'm not going to talk about the symbols themselves, but I want you to see something about them that is present but that you don't see yet. Whether you're talking about the Islam, the star and the crescent, the Christian cross, the Star of David, the Hinduism, the Buddha, the wheel of Dharma, all of these things, every last one, you understand they're symbols, aren't they? And there are symbols that were brought into existence by somebody at some point who was trying to convey the whole idea of religion to whatever the culture and condition and ethnicity was at the time that man or woman awakened and tried to bring forth one simple idea that would explain all of the ideas at once. You following me? Now, what do every last one of these symbols have in common? Now, see, let me tell you something. I really fight with myself about bringing in things like this to talk to you about. I really do. You have no idea. Because on one hand, I want you to do, I don't want your mind in the past. I don't want you identified with, well, why would you put that Muslim thing up there with the Christian thing or the Jewish thing up there with the Hindu? Why would you do that? Go away. This isn't for you. I do it because there is something about this field that each of these symbols represents. Because each of these fields in their own way is a field out beyond wrongdoing and right doing. What is the field that each of them convey through the symbol? Take the Christian cross or the Solomon seal, take any one of them, and what you'll see is that they are all having parts that interconnect. For instance, in the Christian cross, whether you know it or not, this perpendicular sign, the upright part of the cross, represents that which is timeless, from the beginning to the end. Same with the tree of life, all of these enneagram symbols. And then this cross part represents passing time. So you have an intersection of what is eternal with what is in time. And I've spoken about this before, and where they meet, that I call the heart of the cross, where they meet is the field out beyond right doing and wrongdoing. And every last one of those symbols has built into it that place where they meet, these lines meet, and the lines meet in order to represent the idea of something greater than the sum of the parts. Greater than the sum of the parts. We take the part as the whole, do we not? Okay, we can take it down. Thank you. Now, did I communicate that okay? So that no religion is the religion. End of story. Each true part of what was truthful in the revelation of the individual that gave birth to that religion, that's true in every religion. And would that human beings understood that. if everyone understood that the symbol of the cross or the symbol of the Judaic star or the symbol of the Muslim, which by the way was as crazy it is, it's kind of like a reverse swastika, the Hinduism, that these things have become trigger points in and of themselves, haven't they? Where the whole point of that symbol isn't to create disparity, it's to create an understanding of a relationship that exists, that each of these things is pointing to, about this field of intelligent awareness that comes into existence when the constituent elements, time and passing time, the upside down pyramid, the top pyramid, when the two levels meet. All of these things are representing another order of intelligence, another kingdom entirely, not the kingdom designated by a person's identification with a particular symbol. Please? So now let's examine this field that we're describing. Take a deep breath. Do you remember some time ago, and I don't know when it was recent, in a class, I asked, what is that one thing, and you can't get a much more beautiful day outside than this day, what is the one thing that every beautiful moment, no matter where they are, every revelation of something beautiful in creation, what is all of them in the moment of that beauty that you experience, what do all of them share in common? Do you remember I asked that question? Maybe you don't. They all share one thing. No matter where you are, what you're going through, they all share one thing in common. And the answer is, what they all share in common is that any true moment of beauty where the observer is one with the observed, what makes those moments so beautiful, part of the beauty is that they are incomparable. In a moment of true beauty, there has never been a moment like that before. Is that true or not? You might have, I've often talked about up our driveway with the hills and the oaks and the pines and this magic hour of light. I've come up that driveway, and we've lived there for 4,000 years now. I'm never not stopped by that beauty of that golden light and the shadows, never. And it's never the same moment. It's always incomparable and singular, yes or no? Now, if it's incomparable and it's singular, which it is, then in that same moment that it is incomparable, what is an element of that incomparable moment? Do you understand? There's an element to it. It's incomparable. What is it that's incomparable in that moment? What is the element of that? In that moment, I'm incomparable. In that moment, there's never been a me like that before. Even though there's been thousands of moments for me personally of that kind of beauty, every last time that moment is incomparable, and the order of myself that is meeting that moment has never been there before. So in that moment, I am as new as the meeting of those conditions that produce that creation. Do you follow that or not? Something about that moment has never been seen before, and if it's never been seen before, now there is a seer there that has never been there before either. Can't tell you how important that idea is. Is it landing anywhere? Some of your eyes are half-mast. That always worries me. To see something incomparable is to realize in that moment an incomparable I. True nature, true self. To see something incomparable is to realize an incomparable order of being. Because only an incomparable order of being that appears in the moment when those things are married can participate in the field of awareness where that is being revealed. So they are a singularity, are they not? Not divided up into observer and observed, but actually a singularity that is produced out of the union of that moment, where the self that walks in suddenly sees itself in a completely different world, and in that split second, in that intelligent field of awareness, that was what? That was there before I was there. And yet, it's only there when I'm there. These are some of these incredible paradoxes. But see, I can't explain. This can't be explained. You just have to do your own work to start see what an incredible mystery. This magic moment wasn't there until I got there. And even when I got there, it's not my magic moment. It's a magic moment that was waiting inside of me for me to realize. What? And I'm not trying to play with your brains. That's too easy to do. I'm trying to help you see something. A sense of myself that only exists in the moment when the impression and what is being impressed upon come together. And in that moment of unity, something altogether new is born. Actually, it is reborn. And the way you know it is reborn is because even though that moment has never occurred before, you who can see that realize that has always been there. It's just for the first time I'm experiencing it again. Imagine those words. For the first time I'm experiencing it again. So that speaks of a different I, doesn't it? All I'm trying to work to, yes or no? So I'm not just what I behold, and I'm not just the one beholding it, am I? Something had to be there in that moment that could witness what that light was doing. So there's what I behold, and then there's the beholder. And when the observer and the observed come together, here's a big transition. Where do they come together? Because are they not brought together? And when they're brought together, is there not an incomparable, sudden revelation of an order of myself that that must be home. To me, that feels like home, yes or no? Well, what is this place where the observer and the observed meet? Because this drives people crazy. I'm not asking for answers because you don't know. Where is it they meet? In the center of that moment of life as it's revealed. In the center of that moment. In a place where it isn't just the observed and it's not just the observer, but it is another condition, another order of consciousness, another kingdom actually, that comes into place, that appears as if by magic, even though it was there waiting all along. It was waiting for you to turn the corner. Because in that kingdom, the sun never sets. Because that kingdom only exists by the light that makes it possible for a person to step into and realize that not only am I seeing this beauty, but in this same moment, this beauty can't be separated from myself. Now, all of these things are pretty fleeting, aren't they? So what I want to talk to you about is how does a person begin to work to understand this place of a center that is, for all intents and purposes, the field out beyond right doing and wrong doing. There is a field that exists between all things. I've touched on this. I shouldn't have to do it again. Yes or no? I know it exists, but I'm not a part of it. And I know it exists because I have accidentally, by grace, been drawn into that moment where it's not just what I see and it's not just me, but there is some kind of center, a place where they meet. And if I enter into the place where they meet, suddenly I am the observer and the observed. I am greater than the sum of the parts of that moment. And there's only one thing that is greater than the sum of the parts of a moment. And do you know what that one thing is? The thing that is greater than the sum of the parts of the moment? And I know most of you say, well, the divine or God or all. No, please throw out the words that are flags to you, that anchor you. What is greater than the sum of the parts of the moment is the awareness of both parts at the same time. That awareness is, if you want to use words, in levels and scale, Atman, Christ, true being, true self. In scale, that's what that awareness is. Because that awareness has no beginning or end. It is not set upon, it is not determined, it is not created, it is not a condition of the parts that reveal it. Rather, the parts are revealed through it so that they come out of it, as does the branch, the vine. Am I going too fast? So there is in that moment the world I see. I'll try to bring it down a little bit. The world I see, and then there is my experience of what's being seen. That's how I am now. I look at Terry. Oh, man. Wait. God, not Terry again. And of course, I'm being facetious. Because you can just look at, you don't even need to look at somebody. You just have a thought about somebody. And here's what I'm looking at. Now, am I actually looking at the person, by the way? No. I'm looking at my experience with that person, my conditioned experience. So here's what I'm looking at, which is horrible to see. Well, it doesn't matter what it is. Look at your past. Look at the world today. It is horrible to see. And then there's my experience of the horrible world that I see. And in that world, I believe that the horrible world I see is responsible for the experience of it. So that everything that I hate is because of what I see. And what I see is a world that has no love in it, and it makes perfect sense to me that hating or despising a world that isn't the one that I should want is somehow it's justified for me to be that. But we're looking at another order of being where separation doesn't exist between the world that I see and the nature of the seer. Because until the nature of the seer and the world that is seen in that moment is recognized as something that is already joined together, there will be no way for me to understand the world that I see, because everything about the world I see is conditioned by the thoughts that are explaining to me why I see it the way I see it. I actually can't say that better than that. So that I'm never really looking at what is, I'm looking always at what was. And my experience is always of that conditioned nature that knows how things should be, how the world should unfold. So my experience is of my own unconscious nature. And then I resist the experience of my own unconscious nature, believing that proves that somehow or other I am other than that nature, when my experience is that nature at every point in time. You see it? And what would happen if suddenly I actually saw, not talked about, in me is this well of hatred, these vials of venom, this poison, this greed, this selfishness. What if I saw that? So that instead of looking at the world and wondering, well, I wonder what this means to me. Because believe me, whether you know it or not, your judgment of what's taking place around you doesn't exist without you comparing what it might mean to who you imagine yourself to be. So that all around the world, people are trying to figure out how to profit from the horrors of the world that are taking place right now. Everyone, including the so-called peacemakers. Because they're not interested in peace, they're interested in being seen as a peacemaker. Because if they were interested in peace, they would have changed their character already. They would have seen that the world they see is not producing the experience they have. The experience they have is fully conditioned. A consciousness that has been brought up and immersed in a bath of muddy thoughts and feelings, each and every one contributing to the continuation of the conflict that it gives rise to, when instead of seeing that these opposites are complementary, united in a field, when I see them as being not complementary because I am in conflict over what I see. You know that the day will come where you will never be in conflict over what you see again. If you work, you will never be in conflict with what you see. And do you know why you'll never be in conflict with what you see? Not because you're trying to be a sweet, lovey-dovey person. You'll never be in conflict with what you see, because you'll understand the conflict with what you see begins with a consciousness that doesn't want to see it, that doesn't want to know itself. That's where the conflict exists, in the denial, in self-denial. But if they, as I've described, if there is this field out beyond right doing and wrongdoing, a field out beyond the Christian symbol and the Jewish symbol and the Muslim symbol and the Hindu, if there's a field, do you understand what I'm saying? If there's that field, I'm trying to, where is it? Please God that I can know something about that field. Please. And you don't utter that prayer until you see that you are the antithesis of that. That everything about you wants what it wants, when it wants it, and it wants it the way it wants it, and if it's not that, then I have enemies. And if you will give me what I want, then you are my friend, but the minute you stop doing that, we're done. Is there a field where there's no such thing as an enemy? And I know the thoughts, I can hear them already. What do you mean a field where there's no such thing as an enemy? What about these and them and those? What about them? Why do they exist? Where did they get their nature and their enemies from? Can you separate their enemies from my enemies or your enemies? Or are all human beings the enemy of that field because they want to keep the field of their own imagination in place so their identity can be constantly reinvented, so that anything that challenges my identity is my enemy? And then what if I see that the identity and the identification with it is the real enemy? What if I actually see that? Because isn't that what separates me from what I see? Is the identity that's derived from it? Yes or no? And the identity is always known, is it not? Which means the identity is a derivative of the past, and the past can know nothing about the field of intelligent awareness that is ever present. We'll just pause a moment. A witness. If the world that I see outside of me is within me at the same time, is it or not? If the world outside of me is within me at the same time, why don't I know that experience? Why do I only know the experience of the world as for me or against me? Do you understand the question? I never see the opposites, myself and what I see. I never see them as complementary. It's only complementary when they happen to match up according to what I wanted in that moment. Then they're complementary. Again, I bring up the question, where is this center? Are you able to see with your mind's eye at least the idea that there is a place, a timelessness, a field of intelligent awareness, that there is a place where none of these things are in conflict with one another? And because they are in a commingled existence, in a unified state, that unified state, as far as we're concerned, is a completely different kingdom than the one we live in, because we don't know the kingdom of unification. We know the kingdom of what I have created for myself, who's for it and who's against it, and everything correspondingly. I better get on with an exercise of some kind. We're going to lead into it. Take a nice deep breath. Yes or no? I turn on the news, I look in the mirror, I look at you, and it's almost instantaneous, isn't it? No. Pretty instantaneous. Now, I know you're going to say, well, it's not all the time like that. That consciousness is always there. So suddenly in my life, it seems like it's always sudden. How about that? This field where we're invited to meet the kingdom of heaven. Do you know that nothing sudden happens in it? Isn't that part of our problem? Is that suddenly things happen to us? Even when you see something truly beautiful, even that's not sudden, although the reaction and the experience of it seems sudden, but you know it was always there because a part of you was always there within which it was unfolding. So here I am, and suddenly I have this sudden awareness, I'm using these words, of something pulling on me or pushing me in my usual world, yay or nay. And when something is pulling or pushing on me, what is my experience other than there's this and then there's that? And this and that have nothing in common whatsoever. And the way I know that this and that, opposites, do you understand? The way I know these opposites have nothing in common is because I'm in pain, or I'm conflicted, or I'm angry, or I'm anxious because of whatever it is that has appeared suddenly in that moment. Still following me? And that is the experience. Opposites. I don't like the way you look. I don't like what she said. I don't want this weather. I don't want this food. I don't want my body today. I don't want to look like this. All these things are opposites. What I am seeing somehow as a threat to something pushing or pulling against me, who ought not have to experience any form of conflict whatsoever. And what happens when I suddenly feel that way? Anybody? I'm at war. It's a binary reaction, fight or flight. I am being opposed. Something is opposing me. And all I know to do when something is opposing me is to oppose it back. Control it. Trying to control a condition is opposing the condition and trying to change it through your idea of what control would be. Yes or no, please? So the next thing I know, in order to do what? I have to restore this balance. I've lost the peace that I had prior to that moment. So everything about me is, as best it can, trying to get rid of this pain. Yay or nay? Now, what is the nature of this pain as I'm experiencing it? What is the nature of this pain? Somewhere, there is what? There is something pressing and something that is being pressed upon. Something seems to be pressing, it's not me, and it seems to be pressing on something, me. Now, if you put your hands together for a split second, one hand is what's pressing on you, the other hand is you being pressed upon, and you put them together. In that moment that you put them together, there is an awareness at once of both hands. And a completely different awareness of both hands, because one hand pressing against the other creates exactly the opposing force. It actually creates, one hand pushing on another creates an opposite force. Where do these opposing forces meet? Where do they, do you agree that they look, I'm trying to show you as dumb as it is with my hand. Do they not meet? Well, where? Well, we can say, well, in the middle, but I can't see the middle. They meet in my awareness, don't they? So my awareness is actually the center point of all things. But be careful, because don't think to yourself, yeah, my awareness. Because we don't have that awareness, but we know it exists. The light dwelleth in the darkness, and the darkness comprehendeth it not. Have I been able to show you to some extent that there clearly is this field, clearly is this center, this meeting place, and clearly this meeting place where all things meet. Clearly that meeting place is inseparable from my awareness of it. but I don't have that awareness of it at all times because my consciousness is divided up into opposites. But I have seen now, and I hope that I'm helping you to see, I have seen that there is a field somewhere out between the opposites. There is a field somewhere out between not this and not that. You've heard the expression negation, not this, not that. I'm describing to you the actual interior understanding of it. Not this, not that means I'm aware of not this and not that at the same time. And when I'm aware of not this and not that can still exist as singularities, but they are brought together in something that is greater than the sum of the opposites. Do you ever wonder why people pray like this? Isn't that the bringing together of the opposites? The complementary balance of opposing sides. Please, Father. It is a physical gesture like the symbols that I showed you, where in the actual action of it that nobody is aware of, they enter into, at least physically, a momentary awareness that there's a unity between these seemingly disparate sides of things. And that they're not really disparate at all, are they? Are they? No. So we must, I'm going to give you a heady idea now. Understanding this, we must somehow or other be present. We must attend to that place in our awareness where no force has taken a direction of any kind. Because isn't that what happens? Suddenly, my energy, my attention, my force is moving in this direction, and it's always away from or towards what I want or don't want, isn't it? But we have a capacity, the center that I'm describing to you, true self, that center has all of these things moving through it, but it never takes one side or another of that direction. So the forces enter into it and they're allowed to do what they do within that. But the point here that I'm trying to get across is that you and I can be aware in such a way that we can be present to these forces wanting to go in a direction. Thought wanting to go in a direction. My attention wanting to go in a direction. Where does your attention want to go in an unwanted moment? To what you don't want or what you need to do to get rid of it. Yes or no? So my attention wants to go someplace. We're talking about an order of attention that is inherent in this awareness that isn't wanting to go anywhere. It wants to be what it is, where it is, doing what it does, which is revealing that these are not conflicting forces, but complementary. And when they are together and seen as complementary, lo and behold, another order of consciousness is present at the same time. Do you see it? That's where we have to start and where we have to end. In the beginning is the end, and the end the beginning. The mid place between heaven and earth. The heart of the cross. The mid place between heaven and earth. Now what does that mean? The mid place between heaven and earth. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come what? Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So clearly there is some relationship that can be established between what is timeless, invisible, eternal, and that which is physical and in time and always of the past. What is always new and what is by its nature as a creation already done. There is a relationship between these kingdoms, isn't there? So what was Christ indicating? And all true teachers, what are they talking about? Where is this place where they meet? Where is the center between heaven and earth? And the answer is in my awareness of heaven and earth at the same time. In my awareness of what is as it is meeting what was. In the experience of what is suddenly revealed and the experience of what is revealed when it's touched by that. There is the center, the midpoint. And when we are in the midpoint, there is no field left or right, good or bad. There is the awareness simultaneously that one doesn't exist without the other. That one doesn't exist without the other. We want everyone and everything that we don't want to not exist so we can exist, or we want to exist at the expense of everyone and everything else. So that we're always in this state of being divided in one way or another against some force that we say is opposing us. And I'm doing my level best to try to show you there is a place where they meet, where they are not against each other, but reveal something altogether and bring out of that man or woman the revelation of a new kingdom, a new order of being waiting within him or her. Are we still communicating? So what do you think the exercise is? In words, bring yourself in any unwanted moment back to the real center of it. In any unwanted moment, bring yourself back to the center of the unwanted moment. Now, do you understand, in the center of the unwanted moment, I can't exist as someone who doesn't want it. But I must be aware of the self that doesn't want it. Do you see that? So the center is my awareness of a me that's angry and upset. And that me that's angry and upset is aware of what? The will of what is unfolding over which I have no power, as it is touching something in me. So what is new touches what is past. Lazarus is called out of the tomb, quite literally. And in that moment, when all that is resurrected, if I'm sitting there, understand, if I can be consciously aware of the world that I see and the sense of myself as its seer, then in that moment, there's not one side or another for me to take. I am, for that moment, the expression of both sides of the holiness of that moment. The holiness of that moment. And then you have to do the rest. I can't take it any further than that. I can only help you, God willing, to see that this possibility definitively exists, yes or no. And if it definitively exists, and I find myself confined and defined by being against him or against that, that means in that moment, I am not in any field whatsoever where there is unity. I'm in a field that's constantly disrupted by something that's messing with its idea of unity and is fighting to bring it back into its place. And you can't bring it back into its place. And part of the journey is the discovery that it doesn't matter what you do. You are not going to take yourself home to the home you imagined. You're already there. You just have to wake up and realize that it's already within you, that it's never not present in you. And that requires one last thing before I end this talk with 2 minutes to go. What is the one requirement of these incomparable moments where there is this intelligent field of awareness of light, and that everything involved in it is working together for the sake of something greater than even the will that's acting on it and the will that's being acted on? What is the cost of that, of entrance into that field? Hello? Sacrifice. Conscious suffering. If there's a you messing with life, you're in the wrong place. If there's a you fighting with people over something, you're in the wrong place. Is there a fight between the sunlight and the leaves on the trees that it feeds? And yet the leaves resist the sunlight and take from the light the food that they need and reject the rest so that you and I can look out and go, my God, what a beautiful day. So all at once, everything is being done. Yesterday afternoon, late in the afternoon, I was thinking, you know that as you awaken, you'll realize that the divine never stops making a sacrifice. The divine is sacrifice. It's extraordinary. Everything that it gives and it gives and it gives, whether or not anybody recognizes it or not. And at some point you will be the proper instrument in that center, because to be in that center, in that field, out beyond right doing and wrong doing, there can't be a you measuring right and wrong. There can just be the awareness of these galactic, celestial, divine forces up and down, left and right, struggling, and you're sitting there and you see them and you realize they are not fighting with each other. They are bringing about a new creation, and when they bring about a new creation, what else do they bring about? A new awareness of myself, an incomparable experience of what is true self. That's where liberation is. Take a break, come back and have our dialogue.
ever since human beings. Ever since human beings first walked this beautiful earth, individuals touched by spirit have been witness to and then glad reporters of a single timeless story. The awakening and transformation of the human soul. And as amazing as it may seem, despite time and distance, language and cultural differences, there has always been only one great story. It opens with the eyes of the seeker, suddenly glimpsing the possibility of a light that cannot dim. A seeker whose heart can no longer deny its own longing for a love that never dies. This longing impels the seeker to undertake a search, a journey filled with promises, perils, and pitfalls. For those who persist, there dawns a new level of consciousness. The realization of a long-awaited union with the divine. This one great story reveals a secret shared by all. Within each of us is seated, by the sacred, a compelling need to fulfill what we are all created to be. The clearer the truth of this one story, of our common celestial bond, the greater the possibility of a new understanding that can help heal our world. It is time for all of us to awaken, to not just know the truth of our one story, but to proclaim it far and wide. So that the strife and suffering born of our imagined differences can at last come to an end.
Video that we just played. And what's interesting is that we didn't know that Guy was going to give the talk that he gave today, but it goes along so perfectly with this outreach program that we have called onejourney.net. Some years ago, Guy wrote a book. I have it here, actually. It's called The Seeker, The Search, The Sacred. And this is a book that's a compilation of quotations from mystics and masters and teachers and saints and sages all throughout the ages, before, from BC, AD, leading all the way up to the present time. People who felt that the world, that knew about that field of intelligent awareness that Guy was speaking of today, and wanted to know more about that in their own hearts and enter into that place. And come to that place of understanding that supersedes all of the conflict and the polarity that we feel in the world today. And so people have been seeking that and feeling that urge to seek that, throughout history. And that's what the book that Guy wrote is all about. It's not just quotations, it's also several essays by him explaining more about that. And the website that we have that goes along with that, onejourney.net, is dedicated to that. I mean, there's so many things out in the world that are put out into the world today that just polarize people. And we know that. And our mission here at the foundation is to bring people into a different place of understanding and awareness. And everything that Guy spoke about in the talk today, he said there's a field of intelligent awareness where nothing is in conflict with one another. And part of that journey is realizing that you don't have to go anywhere to find the unity you're looking for, because you are already there. And like I said, that's our mission, is to bring these kinds of tools out into the world that teaches people about that and is a reminder to all of us. That's what we need, is we need constant reminders, because the world pulls us away from that field that we are already in and a part of. So just wanted to make sure that you know about that, onejourney.net. Go do check out that website. It's a great place. It's a collection of all of the quotations that are in this book. And then we also have it's part of the living book on the website. It's just that all of those quotations plus others that people have submitted to us, you can even submit quotes that can become a part of that living book on the website. I go there all the time and search for just words like, you can search on unity or awareness or eternity or change or self-realization, and you'll see all of the things that people have had to say about these topics, like I said, throughout history. So it just would encourage you to go check it out. All right, and then the only other announcement I have is that if you're not on our newsletter list, I would encourage you to also get on that list. That you can go to guyfinley.org/newsletter and get signed up. We send out all sorts of, as you know, many organizations would, we send out different announcements about things that are coming up. For instance, we have in December, we have a weekend of wisdom that's coming up December 15th to the 17th, where we have a 3-day weekend of talks that are all on a particular topic. And if you're on our newsletter list, you're going to get notifications about that, and you'll be able to read more about it. And we also have a special that's coming up in November. We have our annual November blowout sale, where we take a product in our store that, you know, we have a lot of inventory of, and we greatly reduce it down to a price that is you just can't pass up. And as we get towards the holidays, we like to have that kind of a blowout special where you can actually get some of the works that we do here and share them with the people that you love in your life, your family and your friends, at a price that, is, everything that we do here, we keep the cost as low as we can. And all of the proceeds that we receive from all of our sales of Guy's materials, if you're part of our wisdom school, if you make donations, all of that just goes right back into the work, like what we're doing, with the outreach program with the One Journey site and these free live streams. And so please do support us, and if you can, in whatever way you can. We'd certainly appreciate it. And do get on our newsletter list, and you'll hear more about these things as they come up. All right, we're ready to bring Guy back on and get started. Let me see if anyone has raised their hand out there. So now is the time. If you like to speak with Guy, ask a question, or just talk with him further about anything you heard in the talk today, just go ahead and click or tap the hand icon if you are in GoToWebinar. And if you're on Facebook or YouTube, you can send a note in the chat area and I'll grab it from there. And I see Patricia's at the mic, so we'll start with her and get things going.
My name is Patricia. The last couple nights I've watched a beautiful new show on Morgan Friedman is moderating, and it's called Life on Our Planet, and it starts like 2 billion years ago. I think I'm still on 2 billion years ago, but it's beautiful. But what it instilled in me reminded me of Guy's talk and the perfect, beautiful order. 99% of the species that have been on this planet been extinct, and it's natural, because when one becomes distinct, a higher form of that becomes available to live, and it's a natural thing. Of course, in politics today, they want to make you feel guilty if something goes extinct, but it's all a beautiful natural order, and that's what this talk reminded me of today. What a beautiful order, if we could just learn how to not be pulled left and right.
All right, Guy, we have Fiona with her hand up. If you want me to go to her, or did you have something you wanted to share with the group?
No, I have something, but let's go to Fiona, and we'll take hands and questions first, and then if I need to, I'll bring in what I want to bring in.
Okay, here's Fiona. Fiona, you'll want to unmute on your end. There you go.
Hello. Hi, Guy.
Hi, Fiona.
Hi there.
Hi there.
I love the talk today, as always. I would be lost without this guidance, and there's so many parallels to the study that I do on anatomy, and I don't really want to get into that right now. I just want to go straight to something personal, because that's really good to see when you're talking about the meeting place outside of good or bad. This field it's so immediately open, free, and nondescript, just the word field. And as soon as I go into any direction of what I think is wrong or right, I was extremely, it was good to see that I felt really really embarrassed last time that I was saying about how unfair family members are and how hard it is to watch all that pain. And as if it's my responsibility, that consciousness isn't mine in the first place. It just defaults to that.
Yes.
And so it's brilliant to see that, and how a reaction will come up to the resistance as if it's mine, and it's not, and it's great to see that. And apart from the fact, what you've just been saying, and all the last couple of talks as well, is the quantum, where you just shut everything down as soon as you're in right or wrong. It actually doesn't matter whether you could be completely right and everyone else is wrong. It doesn't matter. It's the same nature, and you're completely shut down, and no possibility. And there's so many greater forces to be open to just in the middle there. And that's the only possibility of something new.
Well said, Fiona, and of course we could put on our scuba tanks and dive deeper and deeper into that. I would just add one encouraging comment, because I know you do a certain kind of work that involves individuals like that. What is balance? Balance is the center point between the opposites. That's what balance is. And whether we understand it or not, that center point that is called balance is everywhere at all times in everything. It is never not there. And yet the center itself doesn't exist apart from the opposites that give rise to it. So they are a singularity, a holy singularity revealed in parts. And our work, and you'd think you know this. Look, God willing, most of us aren't to the point yet where we get up out of a chair and fall down. It's coming, but we're not there, most of us. Now, if you got up out of your chair and suddenly you were falling down, you would say, whoa, I've lost my balance, wouldn't you? Now, how do you know you lost your balance? Because I have something in me that is balanced. The same center in the deer, the antelope, the leaf, the fly, the microcosmic organ, the same center in the universe, same center. All connected. So if I can know that I'm about to fall down, why don't I know I'm about to fall into an opposite? I'm about to fall into that anger. I'm about to fall into that fear. I'm about to fall into this worry and this anxiety. Why can't I catch myself about to fall and realize right at that moment, that's where I need to come back to myself and realize not just the world that I'm blaming for pushing me off balance, but the part of me that is insisting that the world not be like that. So that then there's a unity between the experience and the world being experienced. So good, Fiona, always nice to hear from you, and I'm glad that we're growing together.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome, Fiona.
All right, I'm going to come on and read this question that came in from Juan.
Okay.
I just sent it to you, Guy.
Okay, let me pull it up.
You got it?
Yep.
All right. Hello, Guy. Thank you very much for your teachings. I think somewhere you wrote that the present is a culmination, not a destination,
Yes.
step towards a destination. This brings to mind the need to understand that whatever response I give is based on the past, as innovative as I think it is. Is there an area in life that this does not apply to?
In short, no, Juan, and that's a fine observation. Yesterday, in fact, I spoke at great length about this idea of us always trying to arrive someplace where our entire consciousness is predicated on the idea of becoming. When I become happy, when I get there, when this takes place, when they're finally like that, when I'm finally the way I'm supposed to be. This endless nightmare of becoming. And becoming doesn't exist without imagination, and imagination doesn't exist without comparison. So that the content of my past never stops measuring the experience of the moment against how it should or shouldn't be, and out of that comes desire, and out of desire my so-called action. And it's not action at all, it's reaction. It is a reincarnation. You understand that, you start to see things. So let me add something here that I was not going to do, but I will. You know, I sense lots of times, it's not just you all out there, but in the room, there's a frustration. You know, you hear these ideas like, well, the center is always there, but not until you're aware of it. You know, why? You know, I kind of get it, but that drives me crazy, Guy. I'm getting old listening to you. I can't bear it, you know. And there's really only one response to that frustration. And I can't take the frustration from you, but I can show you the source of the frustration. Here's the source of the frustration. You want to keep living your life and have a new life too. And it can't be done. Because you hear these things. Listen, I never speak to you of something that isn't part of my consciousness. Never. So that when I'm speaking to you about these other worlds, and you go, God, I love that, but I'm so common. I'm so common. Why can't I have some of what you're talking about? I'm so common. And what you fail to see is that you complain about being common, and then you continue to live the most common life a human being can live, which is the pursuit of the things that you want and hope for and believes are somehow going to bring you the happiness that if you were going to have it, you would have had it. So the risk, in quotes, isn't that you're going to lose something. The risk is discovering that I've been identified with the most common life a human being can have: money, people, possessions, power, places. And then don't judge yourself, because there's nothing more common than judging yourself. We should make a list of the common, maybe we'll do that on a Wednesday night for our discovery, a list of the common things I do that I can't stand doing over and over again. And one day, gentle inspirations, I want no part of you. Give me revelations. Let me know what I must do. You'll understand. You're not going to come upon this field as long as you stay in the field of the known. It's impossible. It's not my law. I didn't write it. I'm just a poor message giver. I'm just telling you. And then the more aware you are of that, the more present you'll be when that old field, that old place, that old person calls you up and says, let's really get into this. Let's make some notes. Let's think it through. Let's make some plans. Let's figure out how we can be safe. Let's do everything to ensure that I go on. And the I that wants to go on can't stand going on. That's why it's trying to change where it's going to. And that I can't change where it's going to, because there's no place for it to go to that isn't an imagination. You know, I wonder how many different ways I've said the same thing over the last 40 years. And yet it's always new. It's new for me. It's another piece of poetry. Something given, something shared. What you do with it, you do with it. Back to you, Kate.
Sometimes I'm typing in the back end and suddenly you say, back to you, and I'm like, ooh.
Well, there's no problem, Katie.
All right, well, here I am. I'm going to send you a question that came in from Raju.
Okay.
The juxtaposition of the symbols, the existence of the opposites, the same time in each moment, and the awareness that is indescribable and can't be explained. Very beautifully described, Guy. In my attempt to develop a question and really articulate it, I can only come up with this. I'm not looking necessarily for a happy ending, quote unquote, unless I am constantly aware of the inherent conflict in this level of consciousness.
Yes.
Am I really then pursuing happy ending? What is the purpose of this omni-awareness?
Yeah, that's a well-articulated question, Raju. Am I really then pursuing a happy ending? Obviously, what pursues the happy ending believes it knows what the happy ending is, or it wouldn't be in pursuit of it. And if it knew what the happy ending was, you'd think by some stroke of good luck, you'd come to it. Now, you and I both know, Raju, I know you're a professional at a certain level. There isn't a person listening, I hope, that hasn't achieved some level of being a decent householder. I have, for all intents and purposes, realized the happy ending. But the happy ending that I've realized is like looking, it's an old expression, all these, it's like looking for the reflection of my face in a stream. For a moment it's there, and then a moment later it's not, because of the will of what is divine coming in to change what has created what it's created. And when it acts upon it, this nature can do one of two things. It can say, well, if somebody's messing with my life, I'm going to go and make a new image for myself, and then I'll have another happy ending. And you can do that. And you've been doing it. I mean, really, you go do it. But one day, please God, notice I'm about to save my bacon again, and it's not saving me. I started saving my bacon when I was about 8 years old. When did you start saving yours? No, really. First lie you ever told. First time you pretended to be something that you weren't. What was all that about? Something needed to be protected. And what needed to be protected was who I think I am. And then one day I realized, you know what, I've been protecting who I think I am since the beginning of time, as has all of humanity. And there wouldn't be wars and violence, and there wouldn't be injustice. None of those things would take place if human beings were actually living out who and what they are, if they knew where their home was. But we don't. And so we have, and it seems inequitable, we have a constant set of circumstances where conflict is ceaseless. And yet the ceaseless conflict is the evidence of the fact that there could be another kind of life, instead of letting, as Raju says, the ceaseless conflict become the seed of the next pleasure that I'm going to have. And I can't say when that is for you. I know what it's like for me. Catch that thought, that feeling, that impression, that force coming in and threatening the tick-tock of time, the body, the health, the finance, the people, the conditions not right, this isn't good. I know you must one day be present to all of that moving through, and it's moving through the field of awareness. It isn't trying to move you. It's moving through the field of awareness. It isn't trying to move you. It is touching parts of you that are designed to be awakened by that touch, so that in the awareness you can start to realize, of course, all that's moving. It is a ceaseless movement in a celestial being, creating constantly the awareness of itself, which if you and I are present enough, we participate in that. And I've described, Raju, if you were hearing it, the purpose of this other order of awareness. In the strangest contradiction of all, that other order of awareness doesn't really have a purpose. It just is. You and I only know purposes, don't we? Don't we? Okay, I'm going to give a whole talk on this. What would it be like if you were with people and you didn't have a motive to them while you were talking? Do you know you never talk to people without a motive? Want and not want is motive. Desire is motive. What would the world be like if nobody was trying to gain an advantage or get away from something that thought was a disadvantage to them? What kind of world would we have? You can have that kind of world. And where you go, you will sow those seeds, and others might be receptive to them. That's our hope. Okay, Kate.
All right. Let's see. I have 2 written questions. I'm going to send one that came in on YouTube.
And Karen is up after that.
I'm sorry, who's up?
And Karen is up after that.
Oh, Karen. Okay, great. So,
She's
all right,
so
here's the
excited to
question
get up
from
there and
YouTube.
speak. It's breathtaking. She can hardly contain herself.
Do you want to go to Karen first?
Oh, let's do it.
Should we have mercy on Karen?
Hi, everyone. My name's Karen. After you said, stop trying to save your bacon, I had to come up. When I sat down in my chair, when I got here, a thought passed through my mind. It was a quote from somebody, but basically they said, those who trade freedom for security will have neither. Mm. And it's easy to see that in the outer world. Like I think about it all the time. People are giving up their freedom for security, and I think that's a terrible thing. But I didn't realize how much it was an interior thing.
Yes.
I've been noticing things a lot lately, how much energy I give up. And it's for that security. Something comes up and a disturbance, I don't want something. And you'll go to the same old, here, just think about that, or you'll sort it out.
The drawer of controls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there is an alternative, because sometimes when I'm really tired, which I think after years of doing this, it's affecting my health, and I don't have the energy I used to. So I will just fall back from that into something different. That's probably the freedom because I don't know what freedom actually looks like. But it's shocking even because it takes so much from you to have that security. And the prison I was talking about yesterday, you said I don't create it, but it needs my energy to be there.
Yes.
And I paid dearly for it.
Yes. Good. Let that understanding bring about the change it's intended to. Over to you, Kate.
All right. Here is a question from YouTube. How to use this awareness to heal PTSD, where those triggers feel impossible, not to get pulled into that moment?
Everybody knows what PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. You know, I struggle myself with a question like that. Because the last thing that I ever want to do when I'm speaking is somehow or other present the idea that this is like It's the furthest thing from that. But all of that takes place in the darkness of a mind that is asleep to itself. For all intents and purposes, it is a level of consciousness that has been, for however and whatever reasons it took place, there are some things that you can never not see. Because for one thing, when you see certain things, and now I'm speaking of people who have been involved in war, violence like that, seeing the horrible evil that enacts itself on this planet, all, by the way, always in the name of something it's called good. That those impressions, when they fall on a sleeping mind, and our minds as human beings are sound asleep, the mind doesn't know what to do with the shock like that. It has no place for it. And when the mind has no way to deal with a shock, and I'm talking about at the simplest level all the way to the darkest level, it must make something out of that moment so that it knows how to deal with it. It is a disturbance that it has no way to rationalize. It has no way to realize the actual lesson in the revelation. So it must create something from that revelation into something it realizes as the reason for the shock. You following me? And once the mind makes that image out of that impression, then everything that corresponds even lightly to that particular consciousness and the impression that was created energetically within it, it will bring it back up. And then it will subsequently resist the image that it made. And the more it resists the image it made, the stronger the image becomes that it resists. So one falls into a very dark cycle called post-traumatic stress disorder. And it's at all levels. It's not just people who've gone and fought wars. It's people that live in the inner cities. It's people who see something that is beyond the pale. You look in your own mind's eye, there have been a point where somebody came and did something and lied to you, stole from you, shocked you, and whether you know it or not, that lives inside of you. That is a form of PTSD. It's just that it's not so common, but it sure comes up just like that, the split second that anything like it takes place, doesn't it? So the task for us to understand is that it's going to come up. You're not going to stop it. You are, in one respect, still very much living in that cave of shadows that Plato talked about. Plato? Plato talked. That's there, and I see it, and I, like that. Like how fast are you to judge yourself, for instance? Did you ever think of self-judgment as a form of PTSD? It is. You see something about yourself and you respond. Do you not? God, not that again. I shouldn't be like that. Post-traumatic self-disorder. Again, I'm not making light of this. I'm just trying to say I can understand the truth of it. Can't I? Now, can I bring the truth that I understand into the moment where that misunderstanding of my relationship to my own consciousness is taking place? Because if I can do that, it's not going to make it go away. But it's going to bring, listen, it's going to produce a new kind of struggle. A conscious struggle where I am aware of what is acting on me and against me, instead of me trying to get rid of what is acting on me and against me. Now I'm looking for revelation and realization from the condition instead of letting it remand me over to the conditions that always follow every instant of that kind of trauma. Does everybody understand that as best I can? Okay, on we go. I hope that helps you.
All All right, Guy, I just have this one question from Frida and no hands in the queue. So after this, we can hand it over to the group there and see if anyone in the room wishes to speak. So actually, Frida sent this in Dutch at first. And thank goodness she sent the translation in English so I can read it to you.
I would have loved to hear you read the Dutch.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I could bring Doug up.
There you go. Or Chris. Chris always loves to read all the foreign
Yes, she
languages,
does.
right, Chris?
She does so well at it.
All right, here's what Frida says. I don't feel happiness at all anymore, but more of a same line, like, okay, I'm here, but that's it. But when I am in the now, only then do I feel the flow and love, and then everything is good how it is. But even though you know the unconscious is still so much stronger that you're always somewhere else and not in the timeless, is just practicing to stay in the now enough?
Somewhere between right doing and wrong doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. Somewhere between want and not want, there is a field free of desire and pain. We start want. I want Christ. I want God. I want the truth. I want money. I want sex. I want food. I want. That is the premise of human existence. And all of the want is the attempt to escape what the consciousness has formulated as what I don't want. So then I go through and I find maybe a work like that. Maybe this, I'm blessed. I find something that truly liberating in terms of what it enlightens and realizes. And now I'm starting to realize, you know what, this want thing, it's not going to work out. And it's not that I can do anything about it. I'm just starting to see that my happiness that was all predicated on where I was going, what people had to say, how much I had, all of that wanting is just a bottomless basket. Then what happens? Now I don't want. Now I don't want to be just living. I don't want to be just someone. I don't want to be just doing nothing. I don't want to be just yuck. Because that's all that's left is yuck. That's Dutch, by the way. Out beyond want and not want. You have to go through both. You have to go through both. And not want is a false flag when it comes to want, isn't it? Because now I don't want this, but here I am. I'm still me. Now I know what I want. I don't want this. Want and not want have to be expired. And the only way they can be expired is when they are realized not as competing conditions, but an expression of one consciousness that doesn't know itself. And then you live in a world where want and not want still exist, but you're no longer want and not want. You're that which watches them come in and watches them go out. And you serve one or you don't serve one. And it doesn't change your nature or your relationship to the moment, because you're in a place where all of that is just unfolding. And it can go this way or not go that way, and it doesn't matter to you. You did the best you can. You want what you want. You don't want. And it's just all nothing. But not nothing like, I don't feel happiness anymore. Nothing like something. Nothing like something indescribable, incomparable. Because when you think of the word incomparable, what does that really mean? It means there's nothing like it ever existed before. So in order for me to know something incomparable, I have to go into nothingness. Can you follow that? And the last thing that I want is nothingness. Why? Because I'm something. That's all I got. Kate?
All right. Yeah, over to you in the room.
Ellen's coming up.
Hello, my name is Ellen. Many years ago, when I first started in this work, I remember I had a moment when I suddenly realized, oh no, if I'm serious about this, I'm going to have to die. And I didn't really know what that meant, of course. I knew that something was going to have to happen. And over the years, I've had more understanding of that. But I feel like today's talk answered that for me. And it is what Ellen has to die to, is the belief that her life is about her.
Right.
You just made that so clear today. That's just, there's all these forces, tremendous, in this beautiful universe that all works together, and they're all coming through and working through us. Which isn't to say that Ellen doesn't have a role to play. It's like the role that each of us has to play is so much bigger.
Correct.
Than we ever thought. Because Ellen's role has always been in her little collapsed world. And what am I going to get here? And what am I going to lose there? And trying to protect things and trying to make a place for herself. And nothing ever holds together. And it's always scattering. And what you're saying is, yes, that's Ellen's life. And she's meant to develop this consciousness so that she can see it all, so that there can be this awareness which can show her how the universe and all its forces is acting through her in its own individual way.
Correct.
And just as it's acting in its own individual way through everybody else, and all of that is not about any one of those individuals, but about this whole picture that we're honored to be able to just be a conscious participant in. Mm. It just opens everything up.
And may it stay that way. While Patricia's coming up, a new definition of karma. It is the ceaseless recentering of all individual parts so that their reconciliation can take place ceaselessly. The true teachings have always said you were never born and you will never die. That's what all true teachings have said. You were never born and you will never die. So the illusion that I was born contains the fear of my death. And the me that was born doesn't exist apart from my conditioning and all the elements that I was immersed in growing up into a world that was dedicated to creating a kingdom in its own name, all of which constantly collapse and then have to be recreated. And at a certain point, I can't take part in that anymore. There's another center. There is one center and yet an infinite number of centers. You know that there was one, from one came two, from two came three, from three all of the infinity of creation. From one came two, from two, three, from three all that exists. That is a description of that center.
My name is Patricia. I saw something when Guy was talking about balance, that everything has balance. And I never understood the scripture about Christ saying, cut a rock and there I am, you know,
Split a rock, turn over a log, there I am.
there I am. Because in the center of it, of
Yes.
everything is balance. And that's what Christ was referring to.
Yes. Come on up, Eric. Anything in the queue, Kate? Anything left to be done?
Nope, we are all clear.
Good. We'll share. Well, that's how I feel. I shouldn't say it. Eric's up, and we'll have people in the room speak for a few minutes, and then we'll hit the road.
Hi, my name is Eric, and I may have mentioned this a couple times, but an illustration, I keep thinking of an illustration because it keeps happening. It happens first, then I think of it. A couple weeks ago, in one of her talks, Kate shared a photo of a tornado, and it had touched down, and it was heading for some buildings. And I remember, and I'm just talking about the inner impression, not the physical stuff. But the impression was that, you know, there was like a little fear of that storm, the tornado, but only because it was heading for something man-made. It was going to destroy something that's man-made. And obviously, physically, you don't say, yay, you know, I'm going to stand in the center of a tornado. But, you know, if I was far away from that storm, watching it in a field, it's a good storm. These storms are good, is what I'm heading towards. These psychological storms are actually good. And there's never not a moment. Right now there's a storm, a good storm, if you want to call it that. Reality is always, never not a moment where there's not the possibility of demolishing the false structure, you know, the false self that I've made. And to take the parallel a little further is whenever that happens, well, Eric has bought insurance, you know, State Farm insurance, to protect himself against that happening. And so that's why there's, you know, every commercial now is an insurance commercial. And just one more thing, and it's Shakespeare, of course. You know, and only God could have come up with this paradox. But since happiness was mentioned a lot of times during this talk, this made me think of this. His overthrow heaped happiness upon him. For then and only then he felt himself and found the blessedness of being small. And to add greater honors to his age than man could give him, he died fearing God. And again, this, not that it's, you know, yippee, this is a whole lot of fun, but that storm, that is a good storm, is always here if we're willing to let it do what it's intended to do.
So I'll restate a little bit relative to what we've been talking about. In the world of passing time, a farmer will plant in the season of planting and then attend to that crop. And then in the season of harvesting, will harvest what he does. And then following the harvesting, the thrashing of it, the preparation, and then following that, the food that is made from it. That is a glimpse over a period of a year of something that never stops taking place every second inside of you. There is no moment that the thresher isn't coming. It is here now. And it is harvesting now. And it is reaping and separating now. And from that, food is prepared now. And you either participate in that feast or you don't. That's the great mystery. The harvest is great and the laborers are few. Every one of these things that are expressed in time have their root in something that is centered in a timelessness in which it is all occurring at once. You and I are intended to understand that. You are at all in points in time, to use Eric's metaphor, there is a storm. Well, what is the storm? The storm only exists to structure. The harvester doesn't threaten the wheat, and yet you can see that if the wheat had a choice, it's not going to go, oh boy, a harvester. But it's still going to be acted on, and it's going to be transformed, and then it's going to be transformed again. That is human life, but we just don't live it yet. We don't understand it yet. But as we do, then we stop fearing the storms and start understanding it is part of this process, a singular center through which 1 is 2 is 3 is all things. And we are all of those things when that Christ, when that light, when that truth lives within us. And I don't see anybody walking up, so I'm going to shut the show down. I'll see you later.